Safe to say, we've all been there. You order some food or drink that tastes absolutely horrible to your palate, but what you do next will determine which school of thought you fall into. Some of you will continue eating or drinking out of obligation for the investment you already made, whether it be your time, energy, or hard-earned money. In my case, I was taught from a super young age to not waste food, because even the ittiest bittiest grain of rice was harvested by some farmer out there. Some of you will refuse to take another bite or sip because, after all, you don't enjoy it. And why would you keep doing anything that you don't enjoy or benefit from anymore? Part of the reason some of you will take that next bite or sip is due to something known as the sunk cost fallacy, a concept that is commonly discussed in behavioral economics. The sunk cost fallacy describes our tendency to follow through with an endeavor, whether it be a book, a job, or even a relationship, because we've already invested some sort of input, whether it be time, energy, or money, irrespective of whether the current costs outweigh the current benefits. Why? Because human beings are more often than not irrational than rational, factoring in influences other than current alternatives, letting their baggage and their emotions cloud their ability to think clearly and act objectively. When we act upon our baggage or emotions, we do so because we're likely to feel guilty or regretful if we don't follow through with an endeavor we've already committed to in some capacity, which in turn leads to commitment bias, or when we continue to support a past decision despite new evidence suggesting that it's no longer the best course of action. In reality, we should only factor in present and future costs and benefits, because those are the only ones we still have some degree of control over, or that can have a tangible impact on our lives going forward. But as human beings, we're wired to try and avoid losses, because oftentimes the impact of losses feels worse than the impact of gains. After all, no one likes to be seen as a failure or a quitter. But as Seth Godin puts it, winners quit fast, quit often, and quit without guilt. So while others know when to cut their losses and move on to endeavors, or to keep the metaphor going, food or drink that they actually enjoy or benefit from, you're still stuck there eating the same pile of shit. I say all of this as someone who also struggled with sunk costs, whether it came to relationships, social commitments, career, and so on. I was that guy who would take another bite or sip even when he no longer enjoyed it, or when doing so no longer served him. The switch really flipped for me when I began to understand who I truly am, what I truly value out of life, what I find meaningful and fulfilling. After doing so, life and decision making became this game of not just time management, but also life energy management. To illustrate, I have a pretty simple example, but I think it gets the point across. Back in the fall, I bought tickets to Rolling Loud in New York City for like $180 or something. Why? Because other people had convinced me that it'd be fun. And in some convoluted way, I also managed to convince myself that it'd be fun. That it'd be absolutely sick to see Travis Scott perform live. But in reality, I was just living to other people's definition of fun and not my own. I just didn't realize it yet. So I went, and TLDR, it was absolutely the worst concert experience I've ever had. I was beyond drained to the point of just being outright irritable. And in the past, I might have said, it, I already spent $180. Let me just suck it up and go the second day. But instead, I chose not to. Instead, I chose to preserve my life energy and to view the situation as an invaluable learning experience, one I wouldn't have had I not gone the first day. While some people's main realization might have been, I don't enjoy claustrophobic concert experiences, fair point. I definitely had that one as well. But the main realization or lesson that I learned was that you should only exchange your life energy for the opportunity to spend time with people who genuinely bring you joy, or to do activities that you genuinely find meaningful and fulfilling. For as much as people talk about the importance of time, there's not enough talk around the importance of life energy. For there's no more important resource, no more finite resource than your life energy. But so many people don't treat it as such, just giving it away freely without a care in the world. In reality, you should treat your life energy as a form of currency, a means of intentional exchange to get something that you truly value in life. To illustrate, let's say you have $10, since that's a less aggressive number than $1, to feed yourself each day for the rest of your life. Are you going to A, blow it on an overpriced New York City smoothie that's 400 calories and not satiating so you can signal to your IG followers that you live a healthy lifestyle? Or B, buy a pound of chicken thigh, 2 pounds of potatoes, a pound of broccoli, 2 apples, a banana, and 4 ounces of strawberries, which is essentially the solid, non-liquefied form of your overpriced smoothie. And just for shits and giggles, I'll spare you $1 so you can buy a slice of pizza. And yes, that could be considered an extreme example, but the harsh reality is that for many people, it isn't. Regardless, the metaphor remains. Similarly, there are plenty of people out there who are way less fortunate, way less privileged than you or I, yet more often than not, they're happy. Why? Because they know what it's worth spending their life energy on. So the real question is, are you really willing to continue exchanging your life energy for something or someone that doesn't truly nourish you for where you are in life right now, for who you are right now, quite literally in this very moment, watching this video? When it comes to sunk costs, they're really only sunk costs if you ignore the unintended benefit of the situation, the life lessons you learned. Life lessons that ultimately guide you towards living a life that is more authentic to you are invaluable. Or honestly, it's however much value you place on living a meaningful and fulfilling life. And to some, that might be the equivalent of a Blockbuster membership card. To others, the value is so vast, so immeasurable, that there is no basis of comparison. Regardless, sunk cost situations provide you both the context and direct experience to realize and test your conviction in what you value and what you don't. A mirror, if you will. In the process of experiencing sunk cost situations, you ultimately get closer and closer to your own version of a middle path, a concept that is commonly discussed in Buddhism. Except for the purposes of this video, we're gonna take some creative liberties, so it's a bit more universally applicable. In this video, we'll define the middle path as the most sustainable and balanced way to live. A path where you feel content in whatever area of life of your choosing, no longer pulled by either of two extremes. But whether it be your eating habits or work-life balance, whatever it may be, in order to find your own version of the middle path, experience itself isn't enough. Instead, you must continually define and redefine where the bounds of either extreme lie. And this can only be done through intentional reflection. The thing is, where your middle path lies may very well be in a completely different set of coordinates than mine, as we're all directly and indirectly influenced by our own experiences, values, and perspectives. For example, when it came to my first job in investment banking, as is the case for many people, it turned out to be one of my extremes, and not in a positive way. I have my own thoughts and reasons for why, but I could honestly talk about that for hours, so we'll save that conversation for another video. While I could have chalked up my 6 months in banking as a sunk cost, I'm actually beyond grateful for it. Because when I hit my extreme, instead of digging my own grave even deeper, instead, I bounced off it. I used the experience as a catalyst for me to realize what I truly value out of life, what I find meaningful and fulfilling, which in turn led me to start this YouTube channel. At this point in my life, I honestly can't tell you where the other extreme lies. That's something I'm still actively trying to figure out, but ultimately, I'm okay with that. And if you don't know where your extremes are yet either, that's totally okay too, because ultimately, you're right where you're meant to be. The more important takeaway is that you recognize that where your middle path lies will inevitably change as you accumulate more experiences in life, as you reflect, as you understand yourself better, and so on. And each time you feel like you're hitting a new extreme, pause, reflect, and ask yourself the simple question, why? And after doing all of that, adjust the coordinates of your middle path accordingly. And what better way to figure all this out than to just live? And who better to live your own life than you? But ultimately, if you're still exchanging your life energy for endeavors or people who no longer serve you, then are you really living your own life or merely existing in someone else's? A couple more questions I'll leave you with, and feel free to chime in your responses in the comment section below. The first being, which bucket do you fall into when it comes to sunk cost situations? Are you someone who keeps eating or drinking? Or are you someone who stops when you realize whatever it is or whoever it is no longer serves you? Question number 2, what situations do you do better or worse in when it comes to sunk costs? What sort of inputs do you have a hard time letting go of? Whatever your answers may be right now, the next time you're in any sort of sunk cost situation, no matter how seemingly small it may be, pause and ask yourself, do I really want to be here right now? Does this activity or person or whatever really serve me? And if the answer isn't a resounding yes, then you very well may be staying in place due to the investment you've already made. If that's the case, then chalk your situation up to a sunk cost, reflect on the lessons that you've learned, and stop eating or drinking, leave the social function, stop reading that book, watching that movie, quit that job, leave your relationship. You get the gist. Okay, that might have been a tad premature. I'm not saying go do all of that immediately, or at least not the last 2 points. If there are ways you can remediate or improve a situation, by all means, try to first. Exercise your best judgment. Whatever happens, I'm not liable. Take those initial steps, and if nothing changes or improves, then perhaps it's time to let go. Time to appreciate the situation for what it was, for the lessons that it taught you. Lessons that will ultimately guide you towards your own version of a middle path. And once you do so, you can, with intention, move on to endeavors that actually serve you. Endeavors that you genuinely find meaningful and fulfilling. The more and more you do this in even the seemingly insignificant areas of your life, the more equipped you'll be for furthering your life's journey when you're inevitably faced with significant life decisions. Because how you do anything is how you do everything. You go from not wasting your life energy at Rolling Loud or a social function to not wasting your life away at a job that may pay well into the 6 figures, but absolutely drains the life energy out of you and makes you feel like an NPC. That was a little too specific. As always, I want to take a moment and thank you all again for your time, for your continued support, for coming along this journey with me. If there's one thing I can leave you with, it's choose yourself, no one else will. No.